Hello viewers, welcome to Kids Auto and Truck Repair. Today we have a 2007 Dodge Sprinter with a 3.0 liter. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to remove and replace the turbocharger. I'm not going to do that while the engine is on the vehicle. I have an engine sitting over here on the pallet. I'm going to show you how to remove that. I'm just going to show you the removal process. The installation process is the reverse process of the removal process. So now let's go to the engine so we can get the turbo removed. Now, I have done videos in the past where I showed you how to remove and replace the turbo, but doing this when the engine is in the vehicle is a lot tough, because if you're standing in front of the engine, the firewall is basically around this area. And filming what I'm doing back here can be very difficult. So now I'm going to show you the bolts that you have to remove so you can get the turbo out. So I'm going to show you how to remove this turbo while the engine is out. And it's the same process when the engine is on the van. I'm going to show you the bolts that we're going to remove first. So over here on the turbo pedestal, we have two bolts. There is this bolt over here, and then there's another one over here. So these two bolts hold the turbo on the pedestal. And then back here we have three bolts that hold the exhaust tube or DPF tube to the back of the turbo. There is this one, and then there is a third one down over here. Okay, so after we undo these three bolts, this tube is going to come down, or we can lower this down. And after that, we're going to undo these three bolts. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to remove this tube, this EGR tube. So this tube goes under the EGR cooler. Okay, now this is cut because they cut it at the junkyard. So we're going to undo this bolt, and then this bolt, and then there are three more bolts that we have to undo once this tube and this tube is out. And these bolts are usually really rusted out. I already got these bolts cracked just to speed up the video, but just know if you're doing this on the van, these bolts over here tend to be very rusted out and very tight. Okay, and if they break, it's even another story. All right, so now let's remove these bolts so we can remove the turbo. Now, you have seen me replace these turbo actuators. When I replace the actuators, what I do is I remove these bolts over here, these 10 mil bolts, 1, 2, 3, and then I disconnect this lever to this lever over here on the turbo. You remove this little clip, and then the actuator comes out. This is very easy to do because the engine is out, and this is so nice. But this can be challenging when the engine is on the van. So now let's remove this turbo. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this tube. Now all these nuts are not really tight. I got them loose off camera just to speed up the process. There's another one over here. Usually there's three of them. There are two on this side and then one on that side. Okay, so we got all these bolts removed. So now this tube should come out. I'm just going to lift it up and then pull this out. So just like that, the silencer and the outlet tube is removed. We're going to get it out of the way. So now the next thing is we're going to remove the DPF tube back here. So I'm going to undo this bolt, and then this one, and then there's a third one over here that I'm just going to crack. We don't have to remove this completely. I'm just going to crack it. So here comes the first one. Okay, so now this tube should come out. Okay, now I didn't remove this one completely because the third bolt over here is just a slot. Okay, it's not a hole, it's a slide, so it just slides in. Nice. So now here's what we got. So after removing the DPF tube, the next step is going to be removing the EGR tube. Okay, now there is usually a gasket here. The gasket was removed, so just if you're doing this on the van, if you're removing this tube, there has to be a gasket between the turbo and the exhaust tube. So now we're going to remove the EGR tube. We're also going to remove this bracket. Now the EGR tube was cut at the junkyard, but once you undo these two bolts over here for the EGR tube, you also have to follow the tube. It goes to the bottom of the EGR cooler. It goes over here. So you have to undo these bolts over here as well. Okay? So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and remove these two bolts. Now once you remove these two bolts, there should be a gasket over here between the EGR tube and this turbo manifold. Now there is no gasket over here, but just know once you remove this tube, there should be a gasket over here. Okay, so I had to get all these bolts loose just to speed up the process. So now the next step is going to be undoing these bolts. We're going to undo this one, and this one, and then these three. These 6 bolts over here are actually the ones that are very difficult to remove when the when the engine is in the van, because they are so difficult to see, and usually they get very rusted out and very tight, so it's hard to remove them. And if they break, it becomes a lot harder, because if a piece of the bolt stays on this tube, then you have to remove the entire exhaust manifold to take it out. Actually, I broke one a while back and it was a pain to remove. Alright, so I got these loose, so we're gonna remove this, and then there's another one over here. Okay, so now this tube is loose, and then we're gonna do the same thing over here. Okay, we got this removed, and then this one, and that. Okay, and this tube over here is loose too. Okay, now some turbos have a bracket that goes between the bottom of the turbo and these holes over here, but this one didn't have it. So at this point, the next step will be removing the turbo pedestal bolt, and then the turbo is going to come out. So now I'm going to remove the first pedestal bolt. Let me see if I can remove the second one here. So here's the second turbo pedestal bolt. So now the turbo should be able to come out. So at this point, we have to make sure that the actuator is disconnected, just like that. And now I'm gonna lift up the turbo. So just like that, our turbo is removed. So here's the turbo. So this is how you remove a turbo on a Sprinter van with a 3.0 liter engine. I'm gonna leave this right over here. This is how you remove and replace a turbo on a Mercedes or Dodge Sprinter with a 3.0 liter. I hope you liked the video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching. See you next time.